Hi, welcome to Planetary Calendar's Astro Portraits. I'm Ralph Dimitrius, one of the astrologers. This is actually not a classic portrait. This is an addendum to our annual forecast for 2022, the year of the tiger. It is in the form of a mea culpa. It is being substituted for a regular portrait because I inadvertently loaded one of the portraits for the music series too early, so to not interrupt our flow for Tuesday forecast, I'm putting my mea culpa in here, which will also save me from laying in bed thinking about it in the middle of the night. Because when I did the forecast, I said I did not think that the issue between Moscow and Kiev would turn into outright war. I said it. I also at the time apologized to the people of Ukraine if it did, and I admit that it was my optimism that was pointing that out, because one's optimistic after all, and cannot really want to believe that in the modern world in Europe that there would be another war after the Second World War. But we're dealing with Putin in a rogue state. Why didn't I see it in the charts? Because what I was looking at was the Astro Cartography for the new moon in Aquarius. It's the chart that is the seed chart for the year, and in the 20 plus years that we've been doing this, it has been very accurate. There were no MC or IC lines, those vertical lines running through there. It's not a hot spot in terms of that. But when I went back and looked at it, I realized that what there were ascending lines. The ascending lines are describing the line at which the sun is rising. And at the Chinese New Year this year, the sun, moon, and Saturn were closely conjunct. We had said early on, this is going to be a pretty serious year in many ways, with Saturn conjunct the sun and the moon, especially in Aquarius, its rulership sign, its masculine rulership sign. It's going to be, in some ways, disruptive. Though some of the disruption will be good, but it's still going to be disruptive. And some of the disruption will be bad, because that's the nature of it. But when I looked at the ascending lines, there is an ascending line that goes from Moscow into Ukraine. And it goes right through Moscow. Like, not even Russia, because remember, Russia is huge. It's the largest landmass on the planet of a country. But it goes right through Moscow, and then it goes south of Ukraine. What's just north of Ukraine is the sun line. So, energetically speaking, Ukraine is more tapped into the sun energy, or at least their capital, Kiev, than the Saturn energy. The Saturn energy is off to the east. Further south, actually passing along the edge of Crimea, is the moon line. So we could really see these two areas being very connected this year, and some type of difficulty going on, a lot of energy going on. But I was hoping it wasn't going to be Martial. And because the Martial lines, Mars lines, Jupiter lines are in a different part of the planet. And we still expect those areas to have some type of issue going on, or, something, a lot of energy going. This is more so maybe the culmination of something. It's really the culmination, I think, of the attacks, the invasion of the Crimea by Russia in 2014. And this is where it gets really interesting. Because when we look at the charts for the invasion, just the other day, February 21st, is when Putin declared sections of Ukraine independent countries. I don't think you're really allowed to do that, but he apparently thought so. The sun was at 2 degrees Pisces, and the moon was at 0 degrees Scorpio at noontime. We use the noontime chart for all these things. Okay? Go back to 2014, when the invasion took place. The sun was at 1 degree Pisces, and the moon was at 3 degrees Scorpio. A big trine, the same sun, same moon position. These within, this is what, within, February 20th and 21st. Okay? Now, during the invasion of Crimea, that chart had a huge advantage for Russia. And generally speaking, they had a huge advantage because the largest naval base in Russia, and one of the few warm weather bases, is in Crimea. They leased the land from Crimea. Remember, Crimea had been part of Russia for a very long time. And Khrushchev had given Crimea to Ukraine, never imagining that they would be an independent country. But when they became independent, they went Ukraine. But you had all these Russians living there. In fact, I believe Ukraine was the only place in which, or Crimea was the only place in the region in which the statues, I think, of Stalin and Lenin were still around. That when the the Soviet Union fell and communism pretty much ended in Russia, they kept their statues in Crimea on the military bases. So it was a big advantage for them. I mean, really, their military was already there. They do not have that advantage in this chart. In this chart, you have Jupiter conjunct the Sun during this transit. Jupiter's in Pisces, the Sun has moved into Pisces. Okay, yes. But this is an advantage on both sides. This is an advantage on both sides. And it's in a feminine sign. So to a certain extent, the defenders have an advantage. Last time, Jupiter was in Cancer, an exalted position. So it has set up a grand trine in water, which is really a huge advantage if you're attacking a place that is a peninsula and has huge ports and you have lots and lots of ships around. Big advantage to be attacking in water. But now they're attacking in water and Jupiter's in Pisces, but it's conjunct the Sun and Neptune, and it's a landlocked region, and Ukraine, Kiev, is closer to the sun line. So the advantage is not so much on Russia's side. Additionally, at the Ukrainian founding, this was August 24th, 1991, the sun was at 0 degrees Virgo. This is within 1 degree of the royal star Regulus. Okay, Venus was at 28 degrees, very close there, very charming country. Mars was in Virgo. So all feminine signs, okay? Jupiter, Mercury, Venus on Leo. The moon was in Aquarius. Interesting, right? Moon's in Aquarius and is Scorpio rising with Pluto at the rising. Pluto at the rising is Scorpio. With Ceres there, it means the ability to herd your people effectively. It means the unseen, hidden skills, the ability to deeply perceive others. And I'm using the noontime chart rather than the time chart. There's a 6 o'clock chart for Ukraine as well, probably when all the papers were signed. I'm not a big fan of time charts for countries. I really find even with the United States, there's what's called the Sibley chart. It's set up for the afternoon. It has to do with when John Hancock first signed it. Well, yeah, that describes his experience. It does not describe the United States of America as well as the noontime chart does. But in that chart, it's Aquarius rising, Saturn rising. But when you look at Ukraine, its potential, it doesn't sound like a Saturn rising country. Okay? It comes across much more as, a Scorpio rising country. It's not Aquarius, it's not Aquarius rising, it's not disruptive, it's Scorpio rising. It's very intense. It's very, it's a bit secretive too. So when you look at Russia, remember, Russia's gone through huge differences. You go back to its oldest chart, which is the historic chart from September 20th, 0862. It's a Libra sun with Saturn conjunct the sun in Libra, Mars in Leo, that bravado, Moon in Cancer, very much home, Russia, home, right? Well, it's interesting that the sun and Saturn in Libra, that's the same combination as Vladimir Putin, a Libran with Saturn in Libra. He feels like he is the embodiment of historic Russia, and he wants to put together historic Russia again. And that's part of the key to his obsession about this, that Ukraine was always part of Russia. He wants it back. But the modern founding of Russia, December 30th, 1922, is one of them. That one's a Capricorn chart. Moon in Taurus. Right? This is really at the beginning of the Soviet Union. In terms of its current chart, who really knows what it's doing? It's part of the challenge that Russia's having, is that it's confused in terms of its personality. I mean, it's really turned into almost a rogue state, in that 55 or 60% of its income comes from energy, from fuel, from gas and from oil. That's most of its wealth. The people themselves are incredibly unproductive. The country is very unproductive. I mean, it's basically vodka, caviar, and energy is their main income. And a great deal of that wealth from the energy goes to the oligarchs. So it's not spread out to the people. Where, Ukraine has been, historic has been democratic since 1991. You have a generation that grew up in democracy. They're not really willing to let go of it to be run by an oligarch who basically just wants to steal from their country. They're willing to fight about that. And so I think the charts very much, the Chinese New Year charts and the invasion charts very much support, the restoring of the home, the protection of the home. And I think that because these are ascending lines, it's like the sunrise lines. The sun, it's dark, it gets a little lighter, and then the sun comes up, and then we're in the daytime. It's a relatively fast experience. You don't sit and watch the sunrise for an hour. You watch the sunrise for 7 or 8 minutes. Hopefully, that reflects that this will be a relatively fast encounter. Though, the way it's looking financially, I think that it's going to be a very long-term hit to the economy of Russia. I think a lot of countries that have been hurt by Russia in recent years, including the United States, a lot of European countries, Russia's been interfering in their elections and causing disruption. I think that this is the opportunity for some serious payback. So it's unfortunate for the Russian people. So that's my mea culpa. Sorry, I was looking for those IC and MC lines. I didn't really recognize those ascending lines. But, we've been doing this 20 some odd years. We're usually pretty good with this, but I usually get something wrong. That's just the nature of forecasting and astrology. So until next time, remember you can come see us and you can see our forecasts as good as they are every Friday. We post them for the coming week. We can find the Astro portraits. Every Tuesday, you can find those at Planetary Calendar Astrology on YouTube, and you can visit planetarycalendar.com for our books and our calendars and other interesting things, including videos about how to use the calendar better. So maybe you can become a great forecaster. So until next time, please pray for peace.